Hello. Welcome to Shining Light on Shadows, a candid conversation about mental health. This is episode 51, and our guest is Eva Green. She'll be talking about the mental health toll of navigating the foster care system. My name is Neil Parekh. That's my co-host, Dawn Neuburg. We are live on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, and my website. For everyone watching the replay, thank you for joining us. This is a special Tuesday evening edition of our show. Usually we're live on the second and fourth Thursdays of the month, but today it's Tuesday evening. If you're watching on replay and Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 Central is not your best time of day, thank you for coming back to catch up with the show. We had our 50th episode just last Thursday, actually. It's not often that we have shows so close together. Dawn, that conversation with Lee Kaiser, episode 50 was Gaps in Mental Health Services for K-12 Students. Lee is a retiring educator, a counselor, with 30 years of experience. And I know personally it meant a lot to have Lee on the show because he's from my high school in Hastings-on-Hudson, New York. He was a couple years ahead of me. But he had a wealth of knowledge about the system and some of the challenges that kids face.
Yeah, he absolutely did. And he was just such a great guest, gave such a good perspective. And I appreciated that he didn't really blame like the teachers or the administrators, more just the lack of training inside schools for mental health and kind of the flipped nature of how education is a priority over social emotional well-being. And I thought that was a really good perspective.
Yeah, one of the things he mentioned was the idea that, all the testing that they do in schools, they don't do a lot of social and emotional testing or assessments about our kids' mental health, and that would be huge if we could do that. I'm looking forward to tonight's conversation because there's going to be it's a nice segue into the topic that we're going to cover today. It's the mental health toll of navigating the foster care system. We'll be talking about not just the mental health kind of challenges for foster parents, but also for the kids in the system, and what resources are available to them. How are they set up for success or, unfortunately, possibly failure in terms of mental health? So it'll be another great episode. Just as a reminder for folks, Dawn and I started this show about 2.5 years ago now with the idea of lowering the stigma around mental health, of just having a conversation with our friends in our circle of influence. And I think it's been an incredible journey. We've covered a range of different issues. We've had people talking about their lived experience dealing with bipolar and a borderline personality disorder. We had a parent talking about that. We've had therapists on. We've had advocates. And for tonight's show, our guest is Eva Green. She is a experienced foster mom and advocate. So we'll just jump right in. She wrote a blog post for this episode, The Hidden Mental Health Crisis in Foster Care. Over the past 30 years, I've witnessed and experienced the mental health toll it takes for foster parents to navigate and care for children falling through the cracks of a fragmented system. We will ask her more about this and welcome her to our show. Eva, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Before we go into that topic specifically, just want to give a quick shout out to some of the folks watching. If you're watching on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, feel free to type something in the comments and we'll be able to put it on screen. Jim Neuburg is saying hello from Milwaukee. His name's familiar to me, Dawn. I think he's watched a couple of episodes, right? He's
one or two. Yeah.
one or two. Not ever. He's missed a couple. I mean, he hasn't.
He asked me today if you were counting, and I said yes.
I count. Absolutely. Jim is Dawn's fiance, and we always appreciate
husband.
Husband. Oh my God, you've been married 2 years now. Why
have been married fiance? 2 years.
Oh my Lord, husband for 2 years. Yes. Kate is also watching from Milwaukee. I kind of feel outnumbered, Dawn.
You are.
3 people from the same address, and just me on this side with Eva. But Kate, hello, good to see you. And our friend Apollo is watching from Philadelphia. Apollo, I did not know this. So I've known Apollo for several years. He's a colleague of mine at Digimentors. He is a former foster kid and very keen on the conversation. Apollo, thank you for sharing that. And we certainly, feel free to comment during the show if you hear something or if you have an experience that you'd like to share. We certainly want to make you part of the conversation. Now, before we dive into that part of the conversation, I want to put Dawn in the center square for a moment. How do you know Eva Green? How did you first meet?
So this is a really super special story. So I, because of my past history, I am a RAIN, which is Rape, Abuse, Incest National Network Speakers Bureau member. And Eva was out in Chicago, and she was helping a group of young people, I believe in like an after school program. And they were to pick a topic that they really wanted to showcase in this after school program. And the topic that they wanted, Eva encouraged them to pick something that was like true to their lives, that was really kind of, they were passionate about or impactful about. And some of them said, sexual violence, gun violence, gang violence. And so she reached out to the Speakers Bureau and asked them if they knew anybody that was close to Chicago that would be willing to come out and share their story. And I picked up on that and talked to Eva and said, I'll drive out to Chicago and I'll talk to your students. And they ended up writing a play about my story and the story of another gentleman who had been a part of a gang. And it was called, in the beginning, it was called Mirroring Humanity, which ended up being changed to Honoring Voices. But when I talked to this group of individuals, we just all got very emotionally connected. My story resonated with several of them, and their reactions and emotions resonated with me. And Eva wrote this play with the students, and the students performed this play around Chicago. And unfortunately, because the play was about a topic that the director of this after-school organization didn't feel was appropriate, even though the play itself was done very, very classy and very, very appropriately. And that Eva ended up getting fired from that job because of that play. And over the course of several years, the students really wanted to keep performing it. And so Eva and myself and the students did everything that we could to get them in places where they could perform this play. And ultimately, Eva and I we clicked, and we just remained very good friends for this whole past almost 20 years. So, anything I missed there, Eva?
No, you have a great memory.
It was really impactful on me.
I was like, oh yeah, I got fired. Breaking rules. No, but and we still keep in contact with a lot of, they're no longer kids.
No. We have children and our lawyers and
parents and coming to my wedding and, amazing, building their own businesses. So it's really been an interesting 20 years. But yeah, that was how we connected so many years ago. And, really proud of, I think, the youth for taking on that topic. And, they were part of fundraising efforts and everything to keep that show going. And we actually did go up to Milwaukee. We performed up in Milwaukee. At Denim Day. We all slept on my mother's living room floor. I think it was like 14 of us. So yeah, it's been a long journey and great road of really inspiring youth.
Yeah.
Inspiring to me, I'm saying.
I think that's really special. And, not only, as I mentioned in our intro, that we've been able to interview several people on this show and have them tell their story, but we've also had the opportunity to bring on people from our lives that we know that we have a special relationship with. And I know how meaningful it is, Dawn, for you to have Eva on the show.
Yes.
And so I'm looking forward to our conversation. So as I mentioned, we're going to be focusing on the foster care system, the mental health toll of navigating that system, both from a parents' perspective, foster parents, but also some of the mental health challenges that kids face. And again, to remind folks, the blog post that Eva wrote, The Hidden Mental Health Crisis in Foster Care. Over the past 30 years, I've witnessed and experienced the mental health toll it takes for foster parents to navigate and care for children falling through the cracks of a fragmented system. Eva, tell us more about that.
Yeah, so I say 30 years. I'm aging myself, but I really did start at a pretty young age. My best friend's mom was a foster parent years ago, and we did a lot to help her. And I know, back then, I was a kid, and I was a kid taking care of little kids, and so I didn't really understand the perspective that my friend's mom was going through back then. I was like 9, like I could do that, like I'm, taking care of these kids, and so years later, as we talked about, I've always worked with youth for many, many years, and after school program, what they would call high risk youth who are experiencing homelessness. And so I always knew that there was a need. I always knew that, there was always, I feel like, a shortage of homes that were able to take kids. And so it was actually during COVID. Me and my husband had some time and we said, let's jump in, let's get licensed. And so you go through a series of classes, but I don't think I could have ever been prepared for what the next few years brought. And I want to be very clear that I am not trying to take away the challenges from youth in foster care, because those experiences will never compare. But I do know that there is something very real about secondary trauma. And then there's also, I think I've learned how systems can cause trauma and cause them to continue. And that's something that I've really had no idea, especially back when I was a kid taking, helping take care of my friends, brothers and sisters who had been in foster care, that I could have never just imagined how that exists.
Sure. So tell us a little bit about the experience. Let's focus on the parent side first. When you make the decision, when you decide that you're going to be a foster parent, I'm assuming there's some training or some I don't know if there's a certification process or assessment. There's something that you have to go through, I assume, from the state before you get added to like the roles, right?
Yeah, and I know, and it definitely, I'm sure it varies throughout states, but yes, there's a licensing process. You go through classes, you have to make sure that you have a clean background. And there's some things that I feel could be improved. I would say this just generally throughout the country as far as the training. And then there's some things that maybe it's not possible to improve. So for example, I think one of the biggest challenges that I had was that here was this child dropped off, traumatized. I had kids, dropped off with very little, I told myself I wasn't going to cry, and we're only 14 minutes.
You're good. You're good.
I told you it might happen, though. I told you it might happen.
You know, I'm just thinking about a little boy who was dropped off at our house at 1 a.m. And I remember seeing him walk up to our house with the investigator. It's 1 o'clock in the morning, and this little boy had blood on his shirt because there had been a domestic violence incident where someone had been stabbed. And, you know, so this is why he was removed. But I just remember thinking how unprepared I was to deal with those kinds of situations, and that training, you know, really can't, because the situations are all so different. There's different approaches. You know, some people are very in support of reunification with biological parents at all costs. Now I feel like, you know, I would absolutely love kids to be with families and parents if it's safe. But as a foster parent, you know, we're also navigating the other side of it, which is seeing those children's reactions when a parent, you know, when they're supposed to go on a visit. I remember my sister had her baby right at the same time that I became licensed, and their first kid came to our house. And I remember, you know, we were just talking about where I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not, you know, this kid has me up, because this kid had been abandoned and was waking me up 5-6 times a night, and, you know, crawling across the floor and sleeping in the dog's bed, you know, because they just wanted to be close to someone. And I remember my, you know, as the months went on, my sister's baby like got older, and she slept through the night. And I'm like, it's 5 years later, and I'm still being woken up, you know, 5 times a night by this child that is, traumatized in the first place. But I think sometimes the systems, you know, in an effort to reunify, I've seen kids that it's been really challenging for them. It's been very re-traumatizing for them. And so as a foster parent, you know, we see that component, but then we also, there's a, you know, there's stigmas, there's stereotypes. I feel like there's a lot of stigma that foster parents are just out there for the money. And I would like anyone, you know, I did post this in some foster care groups. If anyone's on here that knows who can do it for the money, because I've never seen it, you know, if anything, you know, I feel like this should be I feel like it should be a profession. I feel like it is something you should get a degree in, and you should be paid full time as a job, because that is the requirements. That's not what's going on as far as people getting stipends. And so that's, I think, really tricky as well for us to navigate.
Yeah, so one of my good friends, when my kids were growing up, she was a foster mom. Her and her husband were foster parents. And I remember her having a similar situation where she had one foster child, and the mom actually got pregnant and had another child while she was in, her daughter was in foster care with this family. And they like literally called my friend up and said, this newborn baby cannot be with this parent, and we want this child to be with its sibling. And they dropped this baby off, and she said she was 100%. She had no bed, no diapers, no clothes, no nothing. They gave her just enough to make it until the next morning. And she said that the toll that took on her mentally, because she could not say no. Like she felt like she could not say no, that she could not say no to having this sibling come into the house with her foster daughter at the same time as not having any training or any know-how. You know, and she used to say, I didn't get the 9 months to prepare to become a parent, you know. So I was just curious, because I know that you had multiple foster kids at the same time as well, which, by the way, of which you adopted both of those foster kids, not to mention your older foster child, which I hope you will talk about, because it's an amazing story.
Yeah. So we adopted one. I do have guardianship of another kid, and then our older girl has aged out, but still very close with us. But to your point, And I'm like, I'm jealous. I'm like, wait, the kid came with something to make it till the morning. Like, we never got that, you know?
Right.
But what was even more challenging, I think, for us is that a kid would be dropped off. We had no idea where to take them to the doctor. We had no ability. You have to go through, at least in my state, you have to go through, the state child welfare agency to get permission to get kids treated. But I was completely, I had no, and let me just note one thing. I became a foster parent under a different administration, and I don't want to get political or anything, but I will say that, this was, 6 years ago. And so I know that there's changing efforts and things like that, but I've still seen it where I didn't know this kid's history. I was having, I couldn't get this kid into school unless they were vaccinated. I didn't know if the kid had been vaccinated in the past. They would not let me talk to past foster parents that this kid had been with. And so it's, your hands are just, I feel like, tied in so many ways. One cool thing, one of our first kids, his former foster mom had not been able to handle his challenges, behaviors, stuck a little note in had stuck a note in the suitcase that he packed up for him. And I have been very close with her ever since. So it's really been there's a community of foster parents that really come together to support each other. And one of the things she said in that note was, if he's acting out and you can't handle him, please do not call child welfare. Please call me, because I'll walk you through it. This little boy has been shuffled around and shuffled around and shuffled around because people are just not equipped to take on some of these mental health issues with these kids.
Thank you. Thank you, Eva. As a reminder for folks, this is episode 51 of Shining Light on Shadows, a candid conversation about mental health. Our guest for this episode is Eva Green, and she's talking about the mental health toll of navigating the foster care system. I want to bring in a few comments. A few folks who checked in to say hi. Paula Kiger is watching from Tallahassee, Florida. Paula, always a pleasure to have you watch the show. And then my sister is watching from Bellevue, Washington. Amy, thank you for logging in. We mentioned earlier, in case you joined late, one of my colleagues, Apollo, is watching from Philadelphia, and he's a former foster kid himself. And Eva, he has a comment. My foster parent was born before World War I, and any World War I, I'm wondering about the age, maybe World War II. And any conversation about mental health in the 80s and 90s wasn't going to happen because of the stigma. She did her best. And I think that's a fair comment to make, Apollo, and appreciate that perspective. Apollo also says that group foster homes are sometimes difficult, and he's appreciated that he did not end up there. On Instagram, I just want to note that our good friend Mark Lee is watching. He's saying hello from Durham, North Carolina. So Mark, thank you as well for being with us. I know that, this whole process, I mean, there are so many ways in which the foster care system is challenging for people, and it's not easy. It's not an easy road for the kids or for the parents. And then to have kids that you're given very little support for or background on or an explanation of what their situation is can only make it even more challenging. Kate has a comment. Kate Easton, thank you, Eva, for your passion and perspective. Working in early intervention, there's a whole other layer when a child comes with special needs. That's where Kate works. and working through getting additional services, the delays in getting consent from biological parents can delay services significantly and create so much frustration. The systems can be so challenging. Have you had to deal with that, Eva, in terms of trying to get help, but needing to work through approval processes, particularly with biological parents?
So yes and no. A lot of times, the caseworkers would handle those kind of consents if they came up. My challenge was getting consent from the state, because the state is actually the child's guardian when they're in foster care. And so it can be really tricky because, and I understand the need, there, it's a protection layer. You don't want, so you have to get permission to get, a kid's surgery or medications or, so there's a certain level of state involvement. But what can be so tricky is, a kid actually not too long ago had been dropped off at my house. I was told nothing about the kid's mental health conditions, dropped off bottles of lithium, risperidone, all these really heavy duty drugs that I was like, I didn't know. I don't know why they need them, why she needed them. I didn't know who the prescriber was. And by the time I was able to track down someone to, the prescriber, because I was like, look, I don't know her history. I don't know why she was put on these medications, but I do know my brother's a psych nurse, because I called him. I was like, I'm pretty sure if she runs out of these, that's not a good thing to have a kid go off cold turkey. There has to be a titrated thing. But I had no idea. By the time I found a psychiatrist to have her evaluated, should she be on these, should she not, he didn't know how to send the consent to the state. He had no idea how to do it. Wow. And so there's all little kinds of things like that. And, and it's tricky because, again, I think there is some stigma, and there's a lot of stigma surrounding medications and mental health with kids. But when you're navigating the systems day to day, where I'm like, it is not that easy. We're not just throwing kids on drugs. If anything, I'm like, how do we get this refilled? And how do I have a medical professional who I would have thought just knows about this, but doesn't? And so a lot of times I feel like it's the foster parents that are having to educate people. And this is nothing, bad on workers. Look, caseworkers, they are, overrun, they are overwhelmed, they are overworked, they are underpaid, but that's what does happen, is a lot of times it's the foster parents that are calling the consent units or educating the medical professionals on what they need to do to care for this child, as well as to take it back to the woman who just commented with IEPs. Fortunately, education is something that we do have a little bit as foster parents, a little bit of a say-so in, much more than medical appointments or medications. That can still be, tricky as well. Educating educators on the rights of kids who are in foster care, about they are allowed to stay in their school of origin, which a lot of educators just don't know. So that's absolutely, tricky when it comes to just getting kids what they need. It's very taxing on everyone.
So Eva, I'm curious, so I know that during this time that you did this, you weren't married, right, to Brian yet. So what, if I can ask, what kind of toll does that take on the two of you, right, at trying to navigate this as a couple, which incidentally, you ended up getting married, so you must have worked it out really well. But I'm curious, because I can imagine that has to be, you don't know what each other's parenting styles are like. You don't, and you're bringing kids with, significant challenges into your household to have to navigate that together. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Oh my gosh, that is, yes, 100%. I will say, shout out to my therapist who helped us make it through, because she was amazing, still is. But one of the things, because Brian and I were not married, a different element that we didn't know is, so in my state in foster care, you're not really, the home is licensed. It's not necessarily the people. It was a little confusing to me, but because we were not married, only one person could be on the license. And so that person was me. which means that I was having to navigate, the medications and the home visits and the doctors. But like he literally could not do that, which was hard on both of us. One on me because it meant that I had to do it all, but then also on him because he had no say, he had no ability to step up and help me on these things. But yeah, absolutely. I remember actually the first kid that came to us, punched him in the face in the middle of the night. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like, what do you do? Like, we can laugh about it, and it's not funny, but we can laugh about it now because, I remember it was just like, what do we do? How do we navigate it? And that was a pivotal moment where he was like, we can't do this. Like, we cannot do this. And I remember being like, we are not just pushing this kid onto the next.
Yeah.
We are going to do our best that we can to make sure that, he gets the support he needs. Well, Brian, he's wonderful and he loves all the kids. And actually the kid ended up staying with us, but it was, where I was like, am I going to have to choose this child over my relationship? Like, yeah, absolutely. It's really stressful. And I couldn't have blamed him, when there's an element of violence and you're getting punched in the face in the middle of the night, it's like, do you blame, who can handle that? That's tricky stuff. But, yeah, I think that it's actually definitely brought us together. I think that we've both really learned a lot about our ability to love kids that are not biologically related to us, our ability to support each other throughout. Also, like having goals, us still being a couple, us being able to, what are those self-care things that we can be doing and supporting each other with? Because you gotta fill your cup, obviously. But when you're taking care of these little human beings that you don't know a lot about, and they don't remember, or they do, or they don't, or they've lived in a hospital for 3 years and because they couldn't find them a foster home. Yeah, it definitely gets taxing on the relationship for sure.
I can only imagine how challenging. I mean, as a parent of a 13-year-old, and Dawn, of course, has two older kids. I mean, parenting is not easy, just in kind of the best of circumstances. And I don't know a lot of people who have the best of circumstances, right? But I can only imagine being a foster parent, having these kind of curveballs thrown at you and surprises, but still obviously remaining focused on what's best for the child. What can you do? What are some of the things that you do? One of the things that we talk about on this show in several episodes, we've talked about the importance of self-care. What are some of the things that you do as a parent, but maybe with a heightened kind of awareness and kind of heightened responsibilities? What do you do for self-care so that you can still bring your best self to the job?
I have had to get real with myself, I think, over the years. I think for a long time, I pushed myself to do things because I thought I was supposed to. And I have had to come to the terms of like, I need to be taking care of me because otherwise I'm no good for these kids. I need to make sure that, so one of the things I do, I sing in a band. I've sung in a band for 15 years, but I ended up breaking away from a hard rock band, which was awesome and great. But I was like, I'm not 22. And like, I just threw out my back. But being able to form a band where I just sing the songs that I love, that just bring me so much happiness and peace, is something that has been so important to me. One of the other things that I think helps me show up for the kids is also wanting to create solutions, not just complaining and not, which I can do that all day, but, really creating solutions. I'm about to publish my first book. Hopefully next week. It's being come out and it's called Fostering Home. And it's about a little boy that had reading problems, and I won't, spoiler alert, I won't spoil, but like it really helped me navigate some of the things, like when a kid does come and can't read, and me thinking about what am I going to do to make sure this kid is not just another statistic. If you look at the graduation rates or the literacy rates of kids that go through foster care, the mental health, what can I do to make sure that even if I can make a little bit of impact, and so, that's something that I've done. I know I had a moment the other day because the little boy that actually inspired this book and had a lot of trouble reading came home. And I read the book to them before it gets published. And he came home and he had made this little book. And now he has this thing. He wants to write books. He can barely read, he can barely read and write, but he is trying. And it's amazing. But I think that's also another outlet that I've created. I actually have a series in my mind that I want to be able to use, creating children's books to explain really tough subjects to kids that I don't always know how to do. How do you explain to a kid that their parents are in jail for what they did to them? How do you explain, to a kid, I know a lot of foster parents talk about, how do you explain to a kid that has to go testify in court? How do you prepare them for that? So there's a lot of really tricky issues that I think there's an opportunity for me to get creative and feel like I have a support that I just don't in general. No one tells you how to prepare a kid for court, but maybe creating some solutions surrounding that is, I think, part of my self-care, as well as doing singing exactly the songs that I want to be singing, which are the Light and the Stevie Nicks and, a beer garden instead of a 2 a.m. bar, which was very fun. And I just saw the band, they were great and wonderful, but that self-care just really, it's just so essential.
So I'll say, Eva, my vote for the cover for your book is this one. And I'll take our banner off the top just so we're not blocking any bit of that. I am so impressed in terms of, the fact that you're going to be publishing a book. You're at this point where you're choosing covers. So I'm going to put my vote in for number 2. So if you could log that somewhere.
Okay. So Neil, now that you say that, if I'm going to give you a sneak peek, and anyone who is watching today, actually a sneak peek, because that was my vote as well. That was my kids' vote as well. And it was a thing with publishers. Here's the thing. I wanted to take a stab at it myself. I don't know if it, the element of AI in the world, I want to make it very clear. This was a book not written by, it was written by me. So I just messaged you, and I give you permission if you would like, and thank you for sharing, because I did take a stab at a new, that was inspired by number 2, which was also my favorite. But I really wanted to get something a little bit more maybe realistic. So I don't know if you're able to share.
Okay.
That.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is my
I'll say for folks who, just so the background, Eva had put on her Facebook page, a couple of options that she was comparing and wanting some feedback on. So I took the opportunity to share what I like, but apparently here is the one that she's going to be going with, which is wonderful. Eva, I think it looks great, and certainly want to support once you get to that stage. Let us know. I also want to introduce you to someone, because publishing, if you're self-publishing and having to promote the book and market it and do all of that, it's a lot of work. But I know an author, actually I could put you in touch with. It's this woman who wrote The Blue Flower Curtain. You may know her. Author listed as Dawn Helmrich, but now Dawn Neuburg, because she married some guy 2 years ago. You guys should talk because
funny enough,
it's not easy.
Neil, funny enough, Dawn was actually one of my biggest inspirations for taking across the finish line. And so I'm a very big video person. I'm not a huge reader the way I used to be because I'm doing a lot with video and things. But Dawn's book was actually a book in year. I don't even remember the last time that I sat down and finished a book. And I had it on vacation. I was in Mexico and on the side of the pool, and I just loved it. It was so powerful. It was, I mean, I know I have known you for years, Dawn. I know that you've kind of talked about it. And for me, my book with Fostering Home was kind of, I mean, I wrote this 2 years ago when I was in the thick of things, and it just kind of, took me, but you really inspired me with your book to, just going, you can get it done. So beautifully written on a really tough subject.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That means a lot to me. Very much.
We love your book, Dawn. And want to encourage people. I'll put the link in the chat in Facebook where you might be watching, and I'll share it elsewhere as well.
And let me just say this, the cover is such a big deal. Like you don't even realize how, well, maybe you do, but like I didn't even realize, like it didn't feel like a book until the cover was crafted. And then once that cover was done, I was like, well, now I have to publish this. Like I have no other choice. Like this is a masterpiece because this cover was so incredibly meaningful to me because it turned out exactly the way that I envisioned it turning out. So that cover is really, it's just something that once you see it and you know that that's the one, that's it.
Yeah.
I bet you I'm right, Eva?
Yep. And I went back and forth between the cartoon versus something a little bit more realistic. And when my kids approved, that's when I'm like, all right, hands down. Okay. So, but it was
Kate wants to sign up to get a copy as soon as it's ready. So I'll count that as a sale, pre-sale, maybe.
What I will say, I also want to say, is that the proceeds of this book, another solution that I'm working on is something that I feel like has been long overdue. I have been a foster parent. I have largely been connected to kids who have come to my home based on Facebook posts rather than a well coordinated system platform. So without saying too much, because my business advisor will yell at me, the proceeds of this book are going to develop that solution. So thank you so much for any interest in any sales that go into it, because I'm going to be trying to push this along to make sure that kids are more appropriately matched with caregivers that can better meet their needs.
That's great.
Thank you.
Great. I want to just give a quick hello to Deborah Kerr, who is watching from Asheville, North Carolina. Deborah, thank you for joining us. And Apollo had a comment. First of all, he's clarifying a conversation from earlier when he was talking about his foster mom. It was World War I. She was in her Rosie the Riveter phase for World War II. She just cared so much. So thank you, Apollo, for clarifying that. And Apollo also asks, to ask Eva, for these kids, do you get some kind of record from the previous foster home via the social worker? How much background or how much of a briefing do you get when a kid, when a child is brought to your door?
Not much. Unfortunately, not much. I think my, they say there's, and I understand, there's a certain level of confidentiality that they want to uphold for the parents, which is the tricky part, right? Where it's like, okay, you're going to trust me with this kid, but I can't be trusted to know what they've been through. And I get it, and I don't want to be disrespectful to anyone, but I have struggled with that. I have struggled with that idea of, I feel like if I'm being trusted to care for this child, I should be trusted to be able to keep their information in confidence and only use it to be able to support the kid. So I have gotten very often very limited information. And then I have also come to find out that there's a level of desperation from workers to place kids. And I know that there's also been information that has been intentionally withheld from me and my family. And I know many other foster parents that have said the same thing, because there's a level of desperation. No one wants kids sleeping in offices. They don't want them, staying in abusive homes. And so I think sometimes people, or they're busy and they just leave something out. But the impact that it has on us as caregivers is just really tricky in being able to meet their needs.
Sure. I want to just give people a quick update. As I mentioned earlier, we're doing this show on a Tuesday evening. Usually we're live on the second and fourth Thursdays of the month, and we will return to that schedule with our next show in July. Episode 52 will focus on art, hope, and ending the shame around mental health. That'll be Thursday, July 9th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, 6 p.m. Central Time. Our guest will be Dr. Vasu Tolya, a physician and now artist. She retired from being a physician and has started a second career as an artist. And I can say that I'm looking forward to having her on. She's actually one of my aunts. She's my mom's cousin's wife. So I've actually known her for years, and saw this knew her as a doctor growing up, and then all of a sudden I saw her posting about her artwork and talking about mental health. So I reached out to her to be on the show. So she'll be joining us in July, and that is we're certainly looking forward to that. Again, my name is Neil Parekh. Dawn Neuburg is my co-host. Our guest is Eva Green. The show is Shining Light on Shadows, a candid conversation about mental health. And this episode, we have another 14 minutes or so as we go, maybe 13. I'm watching the clock, Dawn. I'm going to do my best to finish right on time. We are focusing on the mental health toll of navigating the foster care system. Eva Green is an experienced foster parent and advocate. Can you tell us a little bit more about the advocacy work that you've done around the foster care system? Of course, you have a number of different projects you're working on, and you're taking care of children, but you're also getting involved in some of the policy discussions, correct?
Yeah, so I've worked in the past as a court-appointed special advocate. It's called a CASA. It's basically you are a volunteer to work with a kid's case, and you're supposed to be just a really neutral party. So you go around, you interview foster parents, you interview biological parents, birth parents, caregivers. You work with the guardian ad litem, which is usually the attorney for the child, and then you testify in court. You do a court report and just say what your observations are. So that was a really great experience as for advocacy, because having that neutral party is just so essential. I think it's really hard when you see these cases and it's like a basketball game and people are fighting and picking a side, and it's like, you know what, you got to do what's right for the kid, and having that neutral voice. I just think is really just so important. But I've also had, I've talked to legislators about the needs for a conversation that has come up recently that I'm really looking forward to working with other foster parents and supporting them with legislation is when kids come into, or when protective custody is taken, they're often taken to, they're always taken to, usually taken to a hospital, so there's a medical evaluation done. There's not a mental health assessment. And so what happens, I find, is that, they always want kids to be in what's called the least restrictive home. So they try to go for a foster home. If that doesn't work, that, they will bump them up into different residential facilities and treatment centers. But I feel like maybe that's backwards. Maybe we should be doing those mental health assessments from day one, so that we're not putting kids into situations where people are not equipped to, to care for them. So I've been talking to some other foster parents about the need for that. And I think, I've been really excited just to see some of the progress that has been made since I started and, up until now over the past 6 years of really taking a look at the root cause of issues and not, looking at some of the preventative measures that can be done for these kids as well. And then also the resources. We know that the majority of kids in foster care are kids that are Black and brown and poor. And a lot of times, sometimes parents just needed a resource. They just needed some sort of housing support to keep families together, which is really important as well. And sorry, I'm so distractible. Every time I see something, I'm like, oh.
My apologies, but I do want to bring in this comment from Mark Lee. He switched from watching on Instagram to YouTube to be able to put a comment on the screen. Mr. Blues Radio 62, but I know that's Mark because I recognize the picture. He says fostering is very important. My brother has fostered in North Carolina, and he has 2 specific questions for you, Eva. The first is, what's the one thing you wished foster parents knew before they fostered? And then he also asks, what do you think of cross-culturally fostering and refugee fostering, which would be, specific subsets. So take the first one. What's the one thing you wish foster parents knew before they started this journey of being a foster parent?
It's the hardest thing that you're probably ever going to, one of the absolute hardest things. But I think the other thing is, get a therapist. Seriously, get a therapist who will be there with you, and get a therapist that is familiar with the foster care system. I just happened to find a woman who actually worked, her daytime job was at a nonprofit that actually provided foster care. So she was very familiar. But every single time that I knew that, preparing to go to court, and I remember I used to have, in the beginning, I used to have the worst anxiety the night before court. I could not sleep. I couldn't. And she was just so supportive in walking me through that. I think I would like foster parents to know too, before they start, don't force it. If you are not in a space to do it, there are so many other things that you can do to support kids who are in foster care, whether it's supporting the foster parents, taking the kids for a weekend to give them a break. I remember when we first started out, we were in COVID, and my old boss dropped, people were just so amazing. They were dropping off food. They were dropping off clothing. I have one of my old bosses, her little boys are just older than mine. So they always kind of outgrow. And she was just so phenomenal. Dawn, do you remember the charcuterie board and wine that you sent me? It was literally just the most special thing ever. So that would be my response. What was the other question?
So the other question is, what do you think of cross-cultural fostering and fostering refugee children?
I've done both. Yep, I have done both. I know, it can be a little, there's some debate in the foster parent world, and some people think that you should place children in a home with people of their same culture, ethnicity, and race, and those are people's opinions. I will also say that we have not had the luxury, I would say, in our state to be able to make those choices and to only do that. So I have had kids who have been refugees, sent here on asylum status, so I have done that. And I think that if you can provide a home to a child in need when there is something, I think that that's the only thing that matters. I've welcomed kids at any background, and there's things that if you decide you want to go into fostering and you only want a certain demographic, you can mark that off. That has never been for me. Those are people's personal choices. I think that love is love is family, and it can be blood. It doesn't have to be. And we welcome every child into our home. They are not treated differently if they are not related to us by blood. And I have been very fortunate to have a family that has been so supportive in that, because I know that there's a lot of foster parents out there that, you know, they're having to deal with, you know, their racist uncle, you know, and, you know, whatever other kinds of, you know, things that they're, you know, assuming about children who have been in foster care. So, yeah. And I one quick point, actually, I want to say, as far as what you can do. And this reminds me, because one of our kids who did come here on asylum status, is that there was a guy who reached out to actually the first foster parent who connected the first kid. I don't want to go into too many of the things, but long story short, he realized it was not in him to be a foster parent. He quit. It caused him and his wife to get divorced. He was seeking out to do something, and he had a car that was a beautiful Volkswagen, but he was getting a new car. And so he had reached out to this woman and said, I want to find a kid who can take this car. And it ended up with our foster daughter, who, you know, came to us, you know, 5 years ago from a Facebook post, but she ended up graduating college, getting a job. And I sent him a little video she had made of just about her story and her journey through the foster care system. And he donated his car. Now, obviously everyone can't do that, but I'm just saying, like, those little types of things that everyone can do, whether, you know, you serve as a mentor, whether you're, you know, dropping off, if you have a sister or a neighbor or someone who's fostering, you know, that kind of support, those little things you can do, because you know what, it's not for everyone. It is a very difficult job, as many other jobs are very difficult. But everyone can do something. Absolutely. 100%.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much. Apollo left a comment saying, hopefully when we're talking about mental health and taking on a foster child, their mental health records are portable if they do the mental health assessment first. And certainly that would help with the transition. I want to remind folks, as we're coming to the end of our show, if you joined us late, you can always catch the replay just after we finish on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube, and my website. On the same links that you're watching now, you can watch the show from the very beginning. And if you are interested in the conversation that we're having and want to learn more, you can certainly send me an email to be added to our mailing list. You can send it to neil@digimentors.group, neil@digimentors.group, and I'll add you to our email list. We only send out, you know, one, occasionally 2 emails per show, usually 1 email. You'll get the notification and any scheduling updates, links to the shows, etc. So if you're interested, please drop me a note. We have, Mark is asking, can we re-air it on Pod TV? Mark, I will reach out to you about that and see what we need to do to make that happen. Thank you for the suggestion. Dawn, any thoughts as we close out the show?
Well, I think I'm glad that Eva talked about her singing in a band, and I think her and I have a lot in common in terms of music and theater and art as a way of self-care. And I'm just I wanted one follow-up question. So I assume, you know, you have adopted one of your sons, right? And the other one you have guardianship over. Are you still taking in foster kids if they are needed, or you know, are you feeling like you don't know how much more of that you're going to do, or where is your status on that?
So we had a really difficult situation recently that I think we're going to pause for now. And I could go into it, but it's 7 o'clock.
Yeah, right. Probably a hard question to ask at the very end.
Right now we have 3 kids that have been in foster care that have been with us. My husband has biological children who are wonderful. So I think right now, I'm about to start my doctorate in the fall. And so I think right now we're going to focus on the kids and focus on doing some solutions to support other foster parents and other youth in care and just families in our communities in general. But I'm always around, other foster parents where my greatest support system. Anyone who's starting out or has any questions, I would love to connect. You can always contact me at my website. I think Neil shared it, or I'm on Facebook and all the things. So I'm here to support in any way I can.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much. We can close out the show. Apollo says, great show. Neil and Dawn, much success. Eva, thank you for all that you do. You're a rock star. Don't let anyone tell you different. And as Apollo shared earlier, he was a foster kid himself growing up. So we really appreciate that perspective, Apollo, and for all of the comments you left during the show. Again, if you joined us late, you'll be able to watch the replay from the beginning on the same links that you're watching on Facebook, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on YouTube, and my website. And feel free to share, feel free to comment after the show is over. We won't be able to respond, of course, during the show, but if you leave a comment, if you mention us, we can come back and respond. Again, Eva Green is a experienced foster mom and advocate, and she shared her thoughts on the mental health toll of navigating the foster care system. Our next show will be Thursday, July 9th, and we hope that you'll be able to join us. Our guest will be Dr. Vasu Tolia, talking about art, hope, and ending the shame around mental health. That will be Thursday, July 9th. Thank you for joining us, and have a good evening.
Thank you both so much.
Thank you, Eva. Bye-bye.